Well, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a minute. What would you consider your life verse to be and why?
My life verse. That is an easy question for me. I've struggled with panic and anxiety attacks since I was 13, and when I was 16, our youth pastor had organized a trip for us to take to a thing called Youth Congress, and it happens once every 4 years, and you have to be in high school, so you really only have one chance to go. And you have to interview to go, because it's actually it's not to preach the gospel and lead people to Christ. It's actually for Christian teenagers who are already more or less living that life, wanting to go deeper. And so you have to interview for it, where you give your testimony and you memorize some scripture and just some things that just to make it, just to make the experience more authentic, I guess. And I had to memorize Isaiah 41:10. And when I did, my anxiety got distinctly, I'll say my struggle with that got actually a little better, and little by little, God has used that verse. And so it's, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And I think, fear not, for the I in that verse is the creator of the universe saying, I'm with you. And just when I say that over and over, when I am having an anxiety attack, or I'm in a panic mode, or I'm just afraid. I'm just afraid for whatever reason. He's with me, and it's like he's promising that in His Word, and so I can cling to that. And so from that moment on, I was like, I love the Bible.
There's a lot of verses in the Bible that talk about God being with us all the time, and those are very comforting, because there's times in our lives where we don't always feel that God may be with us. But in the Footprints poem is a perfect example.
Oh, sure.
God, where are you when all these bad things are happening to me? He's like, when you saw those one pair of footprints, it was, and that was carrying you.
Right. Sure. My son said the other day, he just turned 7, and he said, "Hey, Mom, guess what?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, Josh Wilson was on the radio. He had been on the radio, and he heard a song that said something about faith is not a feeling. And no, we were listening to his record. I don't think it was a single. It was his record that we were listening to. And he said, it's about believing. Faith is not a feeling. And my son said, "Mom," and I turned the radio down, and I was like, "What?" And he said, "I know what that means." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Like when I'm at school, sometimes I don't feel God, but I know that He's there." And he's just little.
And he's 7?
And I said,
wow.
You're right. Like, I was very surprised. And he goes, like, sometimes when I kind of want to do something bad, but then I think I might not know, I might not feel like He's there, but I know that He is. And I don't know, is this like a proud parent moment where it's like, I'm glad that you know that, and I'm glad that you believe that. So I was really thankful I told Josh, I texted him later that day, I was like, "Hey, thanks for that song." I'd never even heard it. It wasn't a single on the radio, but we were listening to the record. Oliver hears it, and he connected with what you were saying. And so just in that moment, we don't know what that little moment actually means in the life of this human being. Like, that actually may be shaping my son for the rest of his life, to know, like, even when I don't feel Him, He is there. I've known it since I was 7 years old. Like, it's a powerful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a 7-year-old too. I have 4 kids, ranging age from 4 to 14. So
nice.
I've got my house full.
You do. You do. I have a 5 and a 7 and an 8.5, and the oldest 2 are boys, and he's my little rascal a little bit. So for him to say that was actually really comforting, because I was like, okay, no matter what happens to this little character, he knows God's with him.
Well, let's talk family a minute. You're married and have 3 kids, as you said, and all kids have an opinion. I know mine certainly do. But what do they think of Mom being a recording artist and going off and touring and, making records and stuff?
I don't think for a little while they understood it at all. And they were really tiny. I was staying home a lot, and so now they're really, really supportive. And I know it because they're so proud of me, and they'll ask, like, they'll come out on the road and they'll get to know some of the 1,000-foot crutch guys, and they'll get to know Mike D from 10th Avenue North, and Michael Tate will, love on him. I mean, he's just always in character, loving on kids. Like, he's just he loves children. And then they'll go home and they'll hear God's Not Dead on the radio, or they'll hear Warren on the radio, or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, that's Mike D, Mom." And they really respect it, and they understand it. And there's not like a star element for them, because I think it's all they've ever really known. And I remember hearing, this was really endearing to me, my son, we heard myself on the radio in the kitchen, and I turned it up. Because I was like, hey, I'm on the radio. And I turned it up.
Hey kids, who's this?
And my son goes, Mom, could you turn that down? I was in the middle of telling you a story. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was like really humbling, but I thought that's probably good for me, first of all, to be humbled by that. But it's also endearing to me that they're not like, oh, you know, they just were like, that's normal for us, so just, you know, pay attention to me for a second, Mom. And so I think it was, yeah, I think they're really proud and they're really supportive, and I hope that we keep a balance there where they see the realness out here, that these are not stars, these are just people, and
exactly.
We're all necessary and we all affect each other, and sometimes people do things that are a little bit more known, but not more important. It's
Right.
just not more important. So.
Well, we've been doing this ministry for 10 years now this year, and a lot of kids ask me, "Oh, what's it like meeting Toby Mac and all these artists and stuff?" I said, you know, away from the fans and stuff, they're just normal people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just like you and me. They're like, really? I guess they're just surprised because when they see him on stage, they just see them as a totally different person. But
I know,
they're just normal people.
But I'm the same way. Like when I see someone, when I go to see a live show or something, you have this idea of who they are, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, they pick their nose too. You know, they make mistakes. They have to brush their teeth every morning. Like we're all just humans doing our thing, and so yeah, it's true.
Exactly.
I'm normal. Just normal.
Well, last question I have for you is, when you're retired from touring and recording and you look back on your music ministry, what's the most important thing, in your opinion, that you want to leave behind as a legacy to both fans and to both singer-songwriter artists that are coming up? What do you want? What do you want the Plumb legacy to leave behind for them?
There's a couple things that come to mind. One is being unapologetic, of just finding whatever it is you're passionate about and living that out without apologizing. Because I think when you do that, even when people don't agree with you, they respect you still. I mean, there's a lot of incredibly famous, entertainers and authors and speakers that I don't always agree with, but their passion, I do respect that they don't apologize for what they're about, and there's something to be said for that. And I think you have a lot more of an impact, and you definitely have more of an opportunity to influence when you don't apologize for it. And try to shape it into, which is apologizing essentially, but of shaping it to where everybody kind of agrees with it and likes it. It's just like this, even as an artist, like these are my songs, this is my set, this is what I wear. If you don't like it, you don't have to go to my merch table and buy any of it. That's okay with me. I want people to feel like there is success in being faithful, no matter how high up the ladder in your corporation you may go, or how many songs that chart or don't, or whatever career path that you're in. No matter how the world sees you, it really does matter most what God sees. It's like, have you been faithful to what He asked? Because He may not have asked you to be famous. He may have asked you to be the complete opposite of that. And so just faithfulness. And I guess the other thing is that hope. I write a lot of songs about a lot of tough subjects, uncomfortable subjects, and it's usually because things that are painful or really dark, the longer they're left covered up and in the dark, I feel like just like a jar of cottage cheese, like it just gets worse. And I think when you take the lid off and you shine light onto something, and you put just that little bit of hope, just a drop of it, that light changes the integrity of something immediately. Like for someone who struggles with whatever they've been hiding, to just speak it out loud to yourself, to God, to a counselor, to a pastor, to a friend, to your spouse. When you can actually open up about something, you let hope in. And there's literally an ocean overflowing with it, and sometimes it just takes one little drop of it. And I'm sort of quoting my own song when I say that I have a song called One Drop, but it's because I'm passionate about the actual message of hope. There is always hope. And we live in a world where we are constantly bombarded with circumstances that make us feel like this is hopeless. But it's actually not. Nothing is ever hopeless. And even if you have utter confidence that this situation should have turned out like this, and it didn't, there's still hope that the situation that it did turn into be, God can still use.
Mm-hmm.
God can use anything. That's right. And I think to be used by Him is the greatest honor in the world. So even if your marriage falls apart and you divorce, is that what God wanted? Maybe not. Maybe not. But in this new stage of being a single mother, I was just talking to someone yesterday about this, God can actually use that for something amazing, and the honor that comes with that far outweighs what could have been the way you wanted it to turn out. And if we'll just let Him do that, that's the hard part, you know. It sounds really easy, it sounds good, but it's of just saying, okay, what do you want to do with this? And it's really hard, but when you, anything that's hard usually has the end result of like, man, I'm really glad I did that, or I'm really glad I ran that mile, even though I didn't want to, or, you know, as small or as big as you want to think it. So those two things, I think, of just being passionately unapologetic about faithfulness and sharing hope, that when someone thinks of Plumb, they think of hope.
And that's an amazing legacy to leave behind. And I know that a lot of young girls look up to you as sort of a role model because of what you write about. And you know, there's many artists out there. Becca Shea is another one I can think of.
She's a friend of mine.
Yeah, she's awesome. I mean, she told me her testimony one time, just where she came from,
yeah, and
what she's doing now with God in her life is just amazing, because she's letting that light shine through all these teenage girls, and I think that's amazing. And that's I mean, you can't leave anything behind more important than pointing them to the Creator.
Right.
And so that's just awesome. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And pick up her new album, Need You Now. It's available now. You can go online on her website and stuff. And if you haven't followed her on Facebook and Twitter, go ahead and do that, because she will probably talk about the stage diving and stuff like that and on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So, and you can go to her website, which is plummusic.net, and make sure you put the B on the end, because it's Plumb, Plumb. So thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you down on Winter Jam.
Thank you.
That's it, guys. Until next time, God bless. Take care.